I'd like to thank Minister Kamal Nath for a very interesting presentation. He has to leave early, but has agreed to stay on for 10 more minutes to take your questions. Yeah. The time should be saved for you, because after you leave, we still have another 20 minutes or so. Yeah. Yes, the lady over there.
Many cities in India, including Delhi, are looking at what is the carrying capacity of various areas to increase FAR and FSI. You cannot increase FAR and FSI where there is no carrying capacity of infrastructure, because somewhere infrastructure can be retrofitted, somewhere infrastructure cannot be retrofitted. But in our new areas being developed, in many parts of India and in Delhi and our larger cities, there are plans where infrastructure is being planned along with higher FAR and higher FSI. But we have to be careful. We just cannot, across the board, say you're allowed to build so much more unless there is infrastructure to support it.
Thank you. Yes, gentleman over there.
My question is that on the ground reality in India, the urbanization is a definitely good growth opportunities, but the political structure, between the 60 to 70% of the people which lives in rural India, and which is a big balance, right, will be able to support the urban renewal or big urbanizations?
I think that's a very good question, because the question is, if we look at the growth of urbanization, of urban population, in percentage terms, growth is faster, in percentage terms, not in numbers, in our very small municipalities, which are 1 lakh, 100,000, 150,000, even 50,000. Growth is taking place much faster there than in our Tier 1 cities or Tier 2 cities. And here, the biggest challenge is capacity building, because they were village councils, they were panchayats. Suddenly they transformed themselves over into a municipality. So they don't get any money under our rural development programs, and they find they get no money from the local government. They have no means of raising resources. They cannot pay their salaries. And forget about O&M costs. They cannot pay their salaries. So governance of these is a big issue, a very big issue. And we are working, then again, capacity building, as I said, there are no skills there. Who are you going to talk to them about town planning and making a city plan or a plan for the municipality? There is no skills there. So we are working with the state governments. In fact, I have said that to avail of the money from the central government, every state will have to have a dedicated municipal service. And unless they set up a dedicated municipal service, they will not be able to even avail of the funds. Even the window won't be open for them. So I think it's in a process of time. We will be able to build this up. and then address that huge challenge in our smaller municipalities.
Thank you. The lady over there.
Good afternoon. Speaking Brown here at Wellington. You talked about a deficit in the planning area. How can other countries who may have some planning expertise with Indian universities in partnership to help address that issue?
We are working with many countries on a G2G basis in building, in capacity building, in planning, in heritage management. India needs a lot of heritage management, has no skills in this. We have agreements with some countries, and we are working closely with them. But this has just started and needs to be built upon. It's a very important resource base for us.
Yes, gentleman in front.
In Chennai, we have the limited rivers and waterways like Kadaya, Kovam, Buckingham Canal, and the Captain Cotton Canal, etc. In Singapore, all the 5 rivers were declined in 1970, and now they are very clean rivers. We want to do similar projects for our Chennai, since our polluted rivers are creating health problems like mosquito menace, etc. We know that Sabarmati River in Ahmedabad is having a reclamation project. Can we have the social assistance, financial assistance from Jawaharlal Nehru National Urban Renewal Mission?
In the JNURM next phase of the Urban Renewal Mission, we are building in water bodies. Up till now, water bodies were being left out, but that's left to the Environment Ministry. And the Environment Ministry looked at it in a different way. So in the new Urban Renewal Mission, we are building the treatment of water bodies also in the Urban Renewal Mission, and if the state government moves such a project, we'll be happy to look at it.
That's the biggest challenge. Now, if you ask anybody who is responsible for the city of Mumbai, is it the mayor? Is it the municipal commissioner? Is it the state government? Is it the... Yeah? Who's responsible for saying, nope, you cannot get a straight answer. A lot of people come to me from New York, from London, and say, who do we talk to in Mumbai? There's nobody single response. In the building activities, there are 5 agencies building infrastructure in Mumbai. And not accountable to different people. And somebody responsible to the state government, somebody responsible to the corporation, somebody responsible to the railway board in Delhi. And I think biggest challenge is now, how do we govern our cities? And I know yesterday we heard about mayors of New York and London, etc. They've done wonderful things. Now, we can't change our system, but I think we need to find an intermediate solution to the problem of governance, and particularly in Bombay. We can build new cities, which will be very nice, modern cities, smart city, but a city with a population of 18 million people, 60% people living in slums, transport system woefully neglected in the last 100 years now, and that needs to be put right. That's, I think, Minister, we need some urgent attention to look into those areas and see how we can do that. Any thoughts on that?
Thank you. That's a very good point, that who's accountable at the end. In the end, it has to be the state government which is accountable, though the municipality, the municipal corporation is elected. But we must remember the municipal commissioner who administers is appointed by the state government. And at the end, it has to be the responsibility of the state government. I did mention that governance was a big challenge. And it's just not governance in the small, it's governance in the large also, with the overlaps. And we are working now on governance reforms with the state governments, so that exactly what you're saying, accountability, delivery, you'll do an asset creation without any measurement of delivery. So you created an asset, you created a water treatment plant which does not work. How many cities in India have water treatment plants or sewage plants which don't work because of accountability and there are no service benchmarks. So this is again one of the reforms we are looking at. Yeah, absolutely. Implementation also.
Yeah. Well, the lady there will have the last question.
I'd like to thank the panel for a fascinating and a very articulate and passionate discussion. And I think what came out unequivocally is that we are looking at planning, we are looking at connecting, and we are looking at financing on the one axis of a matrix. And then if we look at valuing, whether it's valuing land, valuing density, valuing transportation, integrating our institutions, integrating land with connectivity, and then finally leveraging our land, leveraging our transport, and leveraging our financing. If we look at all of this and we realize that these are the key issues, and we also talked about, if we are behind the other regions in terms of urbanization, then we do have the benefit of hindsight or lessons learned. We also know today that in India, it's the middle-weight cities, as McKinsey puts it, or secondary cities, which are expanding rapidly. Then how are we actually addressing that under the JNERM 2? Are we focusing on those cities where we can still plan, still put connectivity, still put public transportation, and make sure that we actually have a planned expansion of those cities and avoid slums and provide low-income housing and make them inclusive? Thank you.
Thank you.
We had the Urban Renewal Mission 1, the JNU RM1. That was the first effort ever made by the government of India to support the states. There were a lot of lessons to be learned from that. Now we are going ahead and we are in the last stages of formulation of the Urban Renewal Mission 2. This takes into account the lessons we've learned from Urban Renewal Mission, as was mentioned, implementation, accountability. We would support any of the municipalities. We are taking some target cities, that's separate. Cities of tourist interest, there's some target cities, and the others would be, we'd support any municipality. In a basket of activities, and projects to be prepared by them, to be overseen and examined by a specialized committee. But this would be linked to, it's just not come and take it. This would be linked to reforms and governance. There are municipalities in India, small municipalities, which don't even have accounting, don't even have double entry accounting. Forget anything else. So they're going to be linked on their size, based on their size to certain reforms. It's only when they achieve these reforms, they will be able to partake of the funds which will be given to them. So that's the most important thing. We found that we would give them support, a couple of $1 million, and they didn't even have the land to set up the project. Suddenly, they had some money, they had the first installment, but no land even. And it took them 3 years to get the land. And when they took 3 years to get the land, the prices had shot up. So they couldn't implement the project. So we lost the money, the support we gave, and they lost because they couldn't do the project. So this is linked to reforms. And reforms include capacity building at the state level. Reforms include at a municipal level what they're required to do, so on and so forth.
Minister Kamal Nath has to leave now. I'd like to thank him on behalf of all of us here for his very practical, down-to-earth answers. The questions are not easy ones to answer. There are no clear solutions in many cases, but you can tell from his answers that he's got a very practical approach towards resolving them. And his is a very heavy responsibility, and we wish him every success in the discharge of his duties. Thank you very much, Minister Nath. As soon as possible.
Not in India.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Minister Kamal Nath will now have to take his leave.
Thank you. Convention Center presentation.
So we now come to the second session of this forum, where Mr. Yeo and all our distinguished speakers will take questions from the floor. So I'll hand it over to Mr. Yeo now.
We have another 15 minutes, so let's keep questions short and answers short, and as much interaction as possible. May I invite the gentleman in front?
Hi, my name is Ambar Dubey. I'm from KPMG India. My question is to Mr. Amitabh Kant. This new land acquisition bill which is coming up, which talks of huge compensations to the landowners, do you think this will actually become counterproductive? That's number one. And number two, very often this huge debate about paying a one-time huge compensation to the landowner versus actually making him a stakeholder in the project company, so that the biggest criticism that I lose my land today, but the real benefit actually goes to the developers. Do you think that's a more practical solution? And I know it's not easy for landowners and also the people dependent on the landowners, who might be the workers on the land, who may not have a title to the land. Do you think that's a more practical solution for India? Thank you.
You know, land, there's been a lot of very innovative work which has been done by different states. One must realize that India is a very large country, and therefore, you know, I mean, if you were to look at the Town Planning Act of Gujarat, we've taken over about 540 square kilometer of land. Our master planning is for about 660 square kilometer. We've taken over close to 540 square kilometer in a place called Dhalera in Gujarat under the Town Planning Act. And it's a remarkable act. And to my mind, town planning, instead of a new land acquisition bill, you need to take the Town Planning Act to different parts. Parts of it is also implemented in some regions of Maharashtra, which need to be done. Now, there's another very effective methodology when the Mahindra city was being developed in Rajasthan, close to Jaipur. The Rajasthan government acquired the land and actually constructed after several rounds of, of course, in the Town Planning Act, you need to work in partnership with the farmers. And we had to sit and do about 75 rounds of interaction with them and then redo the plan so that farmers continue to get that land. The trunk infrastructure is done. But in the case of Rajasthan, what was done was that as a part of the project itself, the farmers were given houses. They stayed on the first floor, and the ground floor was used for commercial purposes. Haryana has a very good methodology of annuity spread over 33 years. So different states have done very innovative things, and I think there should be freedom and flexibility in land pooling to different states. More than calling it land acquisition, I think we should allow land pooling to take place, and this should be left to the state to bring in ingenuity and bring in their genius to take this forward. But definitely making the existing farmers as a major shareholder and providing skill development. I think one of the key challenges will be providing jobs to the vast number of young people who will come into the manufacturing process. And to my mind, urbanization is just not, saying that we want to do new urbanization without manufacturing is not a feasible proposition. You need an economic driver to really take this forward. And the reverse process of that manufacturing process, because workers will come in, young managers will come in, their wives will come in, children will come in, you need transport, you need school. So the logical consequence of that manufacturing is urbanization, to my mind. And therefore, you need to really create skills for these young workers. And a lot of work we are doing around skills. So every single person whose land is being taken, we are ensuring that their family, everybody who's passed out of school, is provided very advanced skill training to get jobs into these new cities or get in anywhere else with this very advanced skill development.
Thank you. Please. Yeah.
Well, the land acquisition bill, to my mind, needs a great deal of refinement. And I think, to my mind, instead of a central act which cuts across all the states, you need to leave it to the states to bring in. India is bigger than 23 countries of Europe plus another 30,000 square kilometer. I mean, it's not a small city-state. It's a very large country. And therefore, you need to leave it to individual states to bring in their genius in terms of land. You need to do a lot of hard work with the actual landowners. You need to interact with them on a daily basis to work out the right methodology. I mean, some places they might be wanting annuity. Some places they might be wanting to work on town planning. Some places they might be wanting a shareholding. And some places they might be wanting a house with commercial usage and so on. So you leave it to the field workers to take this forward.
Please.
I'm Sujata from Hong Kong, an urban designer and planner. At some stage in India, we talked about like expansion of the IITs and technology and everything. Looks like with the urbanization challenges and opportunities in India, one of the areas that India needs to expand in terms of education to get the skill set for people in planning and urban design, not just architecture. And I wonder if government is thinking, because you can't just rely on foreign companies coming in and going out. You really need to educate the people, not only for planning, but also maintaining urban regeneration, heritage, whatever. So I want to hear your thoughts.
I think that's a very, very critical and a very valid point. And I think it's, to my mind, I work with 6 states and I work with planning authorities across 6 states. And when you talk to, several of these planners, when you talk about transit-oriented development or dense development or vertical development, it's very, very difficult. It's very complex. I mean, I've had to deal with about 40 different agencies across different sectors and states, and it's almost been a nightmare to get the plans approved. I mean, it's really a huge challenge to convince, because all the planners in the existing cities are used to sprawling cities. I mean, that's how they were educated, that's how they were taught, and their mindset is used to sprawling cities, and they're used to large areas and so on. So it's very difficult to convince them that you need very high dense development over a defined small space, bring in MRT, bring in LRT, focus on transportation. It's very difficult. So I think, to my mind, you need more than creating new schools, you need to first change the mindset of the existing planners in the existing states. And all of them, actually, you need to catch hold of all of them, put them on a plane load and bring them to Singapore and show them how this development of Punggol has taken place over 10 square kilometer, where 100,000 dwelling of houses, 100,000 dwelling houses have been created over 10 square kilometer. I mean, it's remarkable dense development, and yet you don't feel that it's dense because there are a lot of public spaces. So I think there's a huge lesson to be learned from across the world. And I think second, of course, is that you need to bring in many more planners, many more architecture. But I think India is on that learning curve. India is on that learning curve, and India has started, the great thing is that Indians have an open mind, so they're learning from other places. You need to learn from international consultants as well. I mean, all that exposure to and fro, but the fact is that some of these good practices, I mean, Jurong, for instance, works with us in Haryana. When they started working, it was impossible to convince the Haryana planners, but they've managed to do that. I mean, so slowly, gradually, I think India will change, and it will change radically. We need to create some great success stories of dense development, some great stories of transit-oriented development, and then you will see every single municipality will run after and create a success story out of that. So India needs some great models of success in some of these areas, and I think we are almost on the verge of cracking that.
George, can
I was wondering whether, Shirish.
No, on specifically this.
Ram also give your views, but Shirish first.
And specifically this point, I think it's a point the minister also made, the whole capacity building. Our own estimate said that India needs at least 10 universities focused on urban. Not just planning, as you said, it's urban design, urban finance, urban governance, and literally I think none exist today. There are talks about 2. We think we require 10. The good news is that in the new JNNURM there is funding. Specific funding, at least, I think, around half $500 million for capacity building. I think it will help, but you're right, I think it requires at least 10 universities.
Ram, would you like to add?
Yeah, on the capacity building, I think it's a function of both the practice as well as the knowledge. Now, if you look at all the development control regulations in India, they are not benchmarked. They are all old regulations followed. So although even if there is an intention from the local architect, he's been used to following a practice where he can maximize the commercial gains by compromising on the planning aspects. And this, I think, needs to change at the policy level where we change the development control regulations. So when we have planned our new cities, we have benchmarked with, let's say, Singapore or Dubai or some of the European cities. And that sets the tone for any local or international architect to come and follow the practices which are followed in best of the cities in the world. I think that's very critical in the long run.
We now invite Dr. Ishwa Aluwalia to give her views on this.
I would just like to answer that question more specifically. When the minister pointed out capacity building and he talked about a municipal cadre, that is one condition, precondition for accessing any funds from the Government of India. But the other very important aspect of the new JNNURM is that they are going to build 5 centers of excellence. Whether these are in existing universities, an old school of planning, which will be endowed with new funding and new encouragement and support, or they build new ones, it's very much on the agenda. The recognition that we need urban planners which can think ahead, urban designers, urban managers, is very much part of the capacity building program in the new urban renewal mission. I just wanted to emphasize
May I
that.
ask a question,
Yeah.
exploiting my position as moderator? How do you create a feedback loop so that the pressures on politicians to win votes will move them in that direction?
I can just give you a small example from the work that we did. I chaired a committee on urban infrastructure and services for the Government of India, and we presented the report to the Minister for Urban Development and Minister for Housing. And I sent this report to all the chief ministers, saying that if you are interested, because this is a state subject, we would like to engage with you. Now, I have had about 10 interactions with chief ministers and their officials wanting first to know what the state's role is vis-a-vis the center, what the center would do if they were to do this. And we have been able to bring the state governments together and get them to interact with the central ministers. So some of us, and I'm sure that Shirish is doing it in his own way, today there is this intellectual arbitrage, first to bring the states and the center together, because the center alone cannot do the job. Second, until recently there was a denial that urbanization is even happening. Today, they recognize that urbanization is happening, and then the question is, where are the votes? So because younger population with rising incomes in urban areas is more vocal, because local government is formally recognized, now we can put pressure on the center and the states to devolve funding, so that the mandate of the municipality does not remain unfunded. I think there is a lot of movement happening. Today there are 5 or 6 states where political recognition is there and you see more progress. And these are Karnataka, Gujarat, Maharashtra, Andhra Pradesh, and a couple of others. But chief ministers from backward states are now asking, what is it that we can do to leapfrog, avoid the problems of the earlier states and plan so that we have planned urbanization? I think the country is on the move, but it's chaotic right now. So there is more room for conferences like this to also come to India. Thank you. It's a long answer, but I think it's important for people to know.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ahluwalia. I'm afraid we have no more time because it's 12:30 and we must keep to the schedule. Because of Nalanda University, I have some acquaintance with one of the states Dr. Ahluwalia talked about, which is the state of Bihar. And I watched how skillful Nitish Kumar has been able to use his position to work with the center, even though he's in the opposition, and at the same time improve conditions in the state so that he can win votes. There is something organic in the way India is growing. I remember over dinner with Nitish in early 2009. It was just a few months after Lehman Brothers. So I said, Chief Minister, how affected are you by the global meltdown? He looked at me, somewhat puzzled, and said, no, we're still growing over 10%. It's not affecting us at all. And indeed, in my visits to Bihar over the years, each time I go back, the saris are brighter, the shops more filled with produce, even the animals look fatter. And this despite the fragmentation of political parties at the center. So a lot of the actions in the States, I'm very happy to hear from the panelists, from the minister, from Dr. Ahluwalia, about how the system is responding to the fact that the growth is organic, and that the best way to stimulate growth is to manage it and to support it at the grassroots. And I think it is this which is the reason why many of us have great hopes in India's continuing development. It will not be like China. It will not be methodical and master plan and beautiful room-size models. It will always be a little higgledy-piggledy, but it has a very organic quality and maybe a more stable quality about it in the long term. Thank you very much, all of you, for coming, and thank all the panelists for giving us your views.